your deposits. For those of you that may not be familiar, Investors Community Bank was founded in 1997 with the premise that we could serve our ag communities more effectively than other institutions within the area. Over the last 23 years, through the relationships we've built, we've evolved into a full-service financial institution. Investors Community Bank has grown to be a $1.2 billion publicly traded entity with 4 branch locations and 4 loan production offices throughout the state of Wisconsin. We currently have lending relationships in 59 of the 72 counties. As we've grown, so has our team, allowing us to become more focused on building long-lasting, meaningful relationships with our customers. As a publicly traded organization, all our financial information is readily available at investorscommunitybank.com under our Investor Relations tab. Financially, we're a very solid organization and have turned a profit every year since inception. We take great pride in providing advice to our clients and our communities. Before we begin the presentation today, I'd like to introduce 2 members of the ICB team that will be panelists in our discussion. With us today, we have Ann Dennison, Vice President, Treasury Management. Ann brings over 20 years of banking experience to her clients, priding herself on being able to guide each relationship to solutions that fit their unique needs. We also have Will Depius, VP, Senior Business Banking Officer. Will is an expert at helping his clients grow and assisting in their strategic discussions. Thank you both for joining us today. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Ken Pinkney. Ken Pinkney is Promontory Interfinancial Network's Managing Director for the state of Wisconsin and Michigan. He's an expert on Promontory's product offerings and how they can benefit the client. Ken manages existing bank relationships and develops new bank relationships within his territory. Prior to his 6 years with Promontory, Ken spent 30-plus years in commercial lending with financial institutions in southeastern Wisconsin, including Wells Fargo Bank, Associated Bank, and Johnson Bank. Ken is a 1981 graduate of Ripon College, where he earned a degree in economics. He is also a graduate of the Wisconsin Bankers Association Commercial Lending School. Ken is passionate about community involvement. Awards and honors include YMCA Volunteer of the Year, SBA Business Advocate of the Year, and the Wisconsin Supplier Development Council Individual Initiative Award. Ken lives in Glendale, Wisconsin with his wife. They have 1 adult son. Ken, we appreciate the relationship ICB has with you as well as our customers, and we look forward to hearing some of your insights. With that, sir, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be able to address the group today. And one of the things I wanted to definitely put out there before the actual presentation begins, we're always open for questions. You don't have to wait until the very end of the presentation for that. More than happy to answer any questions. And this is really an opportunity to be able to just put out there information that we find that will be very beneficial to you in your relationship with Investors Community Bank as well. So before we actually get right into the slide program, before we get to the next slide, I thought I could give you a little background regarding the Promontory Interfinancial Network. Actually, there's a couple things that are going on right now. The big news is, as of Monday, we are going to be changing our name. Promontory Interfinancial Network is a mouthful, and one of the things we wanted to take a look at was trying to streamline things so it's a more effective name that's not so many syllables that are actually out there. Our products don't change, but we just think that from a market perspective, it's going to make an awful lot of sense. So we are going to be changing our name over to IntraFi Network. A lot shorter than Promontory Interfinancial Network, and definitely looking forward to going forward with things. But to give you a little background on IntraFi, formerly known as Promontory, we were founded in 2002. We've basically established relationships with over 3,000 banks in the United States. They're all part of our network, and that enables us to provide multi-million-dollar FDIC insurance coverage products for a couple of various opportunities that are actually out there. We're the #1 provider for FDIC insured products in the country. One of the things that's really important from the standpoint of one of the things we think is important to actually put out there from an information standpoint is the background of our founders. Back in 2002, when Promontory was originally conceived, our founder was the former chairman, or our former chairman was the controller of the currency. Our vice chairman was the former vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, and our president and CEO was the chief of staff of the controller of the currency and the FDIC. As you can see, they've got very, very strong regulatory backgrounds. So one of the things that they wanted to do was develop products that would assist community banks in the marketplace. And in essence, they wanted to develop a technology that would allow a community bank, a single community bank, to act like several, which that's what brought up our first product, which was the CD account registry service. So our technology is really out there and it allows for the depositors that have concerns regarding FDIC insurance coverage to basically work with a single institution, investors, and that single institution can provide multi-million-dollar FDIC insurance coverage with a couple of very key products that you'll find very useful. And as we have pointed out before, we've got 3,000 network banks. That basically represents 50% of all banks within the United States. 97% of those banks that are members of Promontory or IntraFi are also community banks. So that's really the big focal point that we've always been trying to look at and work with those institutions to be able to allow them to work with the communities and be able to compete with the larger banks that are out there. In addition to that, we've got 20 patents for our technology that's actually there. But this is just a good background. And I think the major point is just making sure that everyone is aware that our founders had a very strong regulatory background, and that's spilled over to the actual operation as well. So they wanted to be able to develop a technology that, again, community banks could really take advantage of, be out there and be able to be competitive. And this is something that we think you'll find very, very useful going forward. Let's hop to the next slide.
Oh, and Ken,
yes.
This is Ann. Before we move on to that slide, I did want to make mention of some of the products that we have in-house that will support the ICS service. And to describe those, there are two. We're looking at a standalone account, which is similar to what you would consider a money market account to be. The account is funded by your organizations via online banking or by contacting your banker. So those funds can move back and forth, and there is no limitation as to the amount of transactions that can occur during a business cycle. Secondarily, we have an automated sweep, and the bank would work with you to define a balance, a particular balance, what we would call a target balance on a master account. And then the bank can automate the transfer of funds to and from the ICS account as needed to be sure that that target balance is managed appropriately. Thank you.
Okay, that's the key component that's actually out there. And again, I think Ann gave a great overview. One of the things that's really important to keep in mind is when you look at the Insured Cash Sweep, which is our liquid product, the Insured Cash Sweep provides 100% FDIC insurance coverage for multi-million-dollar deposits. And one of the things that's key is because of the fact of our size, because we have a 3,000 network, 3,000 bank network, our capacity for that product, either the demand account for unlimited withdrawals or the savings option in the money market account, both of those products will carry $100 million per tax ID for capacity. So that's one of the advantages that you can see with investors. They can actually handle some very significant balances without any issue whatsoever. And again, as Ann had pointed out before, we also have a longer-term product. The Insured Cash Sweep is the liquid side, so those scenarios where you're trying to make sure that you've got daily access to your deposits, but at the same time have the safety and soundness of the FDIC supporting those dollars, that's what the Insured Cash Sweep is for. For those longer-term products where you want to actually place dollars within CDs, but still want to have that same safety and soundness, that's what the CD account registry service is set up for, or CDARS. You may have heard of that in the past. That was our original product that came out, and of course the Insured Cash Sweep came out several years later, and it's been about 10 years that it's been out in the marketplace. But again, because the Insured Cash Sweep really looks at liquidity, so you've got the access to those dollars, that's really the biggest component that's there. And we're working in conjunction with investors, and by accessing this network and providing that service, they're able to handle those very large deposits and provide that safety and soundness. One of the other key points that's really important with while we're still on this slide is just looking at FDIC insurance coverage in general. Because we're able to provide multi-million-dollar FDIC insurance coverage, one of the things that's important is if there's ever a bank failure, and with the FDIC insurance coverage that's actually out there, they will typically pay within a few days of a failure. Most often, they'll do it the next business day. But one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that no one has ever lost a penny of FDIC insured insurance that's actually out there. It's always been very stable. It's one of the things that's very important to keep in mind as well is that FDIC insurance coverage through our program basically will be able to liquidate a scenario faster than if you even had pledged collateral. There's a couple components that are there. Because of the fact that you don't have to really track any values that are there, a lot of the overhead or the administrative cost goes away, and you've got the safety and soundness component, knowing that within, even if there is a bank failure, you would be paid with the FDIC within typically a business day, but no later than a few days going out on that. Before we go over to the next slide, I think the other component that I thought was important to keep in mind, even though we're talking about the insured cash sweep, the liquid side of our product right now, on the longer term side, again, that's called CDARS, or the CD Account Registry Service. And under that service, we basically have several maturities that are available for CDs to place those large deposits into those CDs and get the multi-million-dollar FDIC insurance coverage. With CDARS, the maturities that are actually out there are a 4-week, a 13-week, a 26-week, a 1-year, a 2-year, 3-year, and 5-year CDs. So that is actually that's available out there. And the beauty of it is that you can combine various maturities to be able to handle various lengths of CDs that you're looking for. So that's a very important component that's there. Let's go to the next slide. Now with ICS, again, it's called the Insured Cash Sweep Service. It's a smart and convenient way to safeguard large deposits through access to the multi-million-dollar FDIC insurance coverage that we actually identified before through the Investors Community Bank. With ICS, you can enjoy the peace of mind knowing that you've got the ICS funds placed into either a demand account for unlimited withdrawals or going into a savings option for limited withdrawals that are there. But again, both are basically eligible for multi-million-dollar FDIC insurance coverage. And as we talked about before, because of the size of the network, that multi-million-dollar limit is basically $100 million for each one of those services. So again, it's got plenty of capacity to be able to handle any scenario that's actually out there. You got the benefit of actually having daily liquidity. Again, because of the fact that Investors is an integrated bank with Promontory, and in other words, our technology is integrated with their core provider, so they're able to actually have the ability to be able to set up a target balance with a customer, and once that target balance has been established, anything above the target balance will automatically sweep into the network, getting the 100% FDIC insurance coverage. And conversely, if the target balance fell below, or the balance of the account fell below the target balance, it'll automatically pull funds out of the network. Again, providing very good liquidity on a daily basis for a customer. You've also got the ability to capitalize on the cost savings and the convenience of actually working with one institution, providing you that multi-million-dollar coverage and that safety and soundness that you're looking for. Next slide.
We do have a question in the Q&A.
Yes.
Can you repeat those CD terms?
Oh, certainly. For the CDs, you've got a 4-week CD, a 13-week CD, a 26-week CD, a 1-year CD, 2-year CD, 3-year CD, and a 5-year CD. And the important component is, again, because of our partnership with Investors Community Bank, even though those are specifically listed maturities, you can actually piggyback with the various maturities to provide what the customer is looking for. So if the bank would like to negotiate along with you and get that set up, for example, if you needed to have an 18-month CD, and if investors wanted to do an 18-month CD, it's as simple as taking a 1-year CD and then coupling along with that a 6-month CD to give the full 18 months that you're looking for. So you've got a lot of flexibility that's actually out there. And again, you're able to get that 100% FDIC insurance coverage by using those various CDs. Any other questions out right now? Well, this is great. Be able to chime in as we're moving along, because there's nothing set on that. We're more than happy to answer any questions that do come up along the presentation. But when you look at why ICS and the Insured Cash Sweep, one of the big things, of course, is that you're able to enjoy the peace of mind, because in essence, by working directly with Investors Community Bank, those large deposits, not just the $250,000, but again, as we talked about before, up to $100 million per tax ID, is eligible for that 100% FDIC insurance coverage. So you know that that is actually taken care of. There's no issues that are there. There's no tracking that you have to do. You don't have to worry about any valuation changes. If you're looking at pledge collateral, that's one of the big differences. You've got the 100% coverage for the U.S. government backing those deposits, so there's no exposure that's there. The liquidity is also very key. So if you're looking for safety and soundness and making sure that your principal deposits are taken care of, but in addition to that, you've got the ability to have access on a daily basis, which is very important from a business operation. You're going to receive a competitive rate. One of the things that you'll be able to do is to sit down with your banker at Investors, and they'll be able to lay out what they'll be able to pay for those deposits. So again, you'll be getting a return on your dollars as well as having the safety and soundness with the FDIC insurance coverage. You're also able to save time, again, because of the standpoint that not having to track any collateral or look at any valuation changes that are there, that you've got that component taken care of. And you've got the additional component of being able to have integration come into play where you can actually have a fully automated relationship where you can set a target balance in your transaction account, and any dollars above that target balance will flow into the network, and conversely, it'll pull it back if you need those dollars. And that's that whole component of having the liquidity that you're looking for. And you wanted to chime in?
Yes, thanks, Ken. You talked a little bit about the competitive rate, and I just wanted to address that we do offer a competitive rate. We are indexing our rate to the local government investment pool. So you can be sure of your rate from month to month. You can verify that, and yes, it is higher than the current rate in the pool.
Okay. Before we hop to the next slide, one of the other things that I think is important to keep in mind when you're looking at the Insured Cash Sweep, and this goes along with the CD account registry service as well, but it's very good from the customer's perspective. If you take a look at what life is like without the Insured Cash Sweep or the CD account registry service, again, you've only got a couple of options that are actually out there. You can go to a single institution and require that they provide you with pledged collateral to cover your deposits, or the other option that you have is to have multiple bank relationships, making sure that you keep those balances below that $250,000 threshold. Having that being the case, if you're looking at having multiple banks maintain balances, you've got to negotiate with all those institutions. You've got to consolidate those statements as they come through. You've got to physically do all the work of getting out to those various institutions to do that. One of the big components that's actually out there when you look at ICS and CDARS, the technology basically eliminates the need or the footwork that's actually out there that you'd have to do if you're trying to maintain those balances with multiple accounts. You can have a single bank relationship with Investors and get that safety and soundness that you're looking for without having to worry about being in excess of $250,000, because we've got a network of banks that actually provide that 100% FDIC insurance coverage up to that $100 million level with ICS and $50 million on the CD account registry side. So that's the part that really works out very well. And the other component that's important to keep in mind is that with both products, ICS and CDARS, at the end of the month, you receive a month-end statement that basically shows the activity, either with your CDs, with the accruals on the interest side, or the activity on the Insured Cash Sweep, which would be looking at the demand account or the money market account, and showing that activity. And in addition to that, it will show the individual institutions where the dollars have been placed within the network. So you've got all of that detail, all of that work is actually done, and you receive that concise single statement that actually has all that information, eliminating the need to have to try and negotiate and working with various institutions and work with various statements. So that makes life a lot simpler. That's what it's really all about. It's basically looking at having a very strong single bank relationship and getting all the safety and soundness that you're looking for with that single relationship. Let's hop to the next slide. Okay, now how does all this work? The technology that's really out there for the Insured Cash Sweep on the liquid side, as well as the CD account registry service on the longer term side, the technology is actually the same. In essence, what we really have the ability to do is when you bring your large deposit to Investors, let's say it's in the Insured Cash Sweep, and you're going to put those funds into a demand account. Our technology will take that large deposit and break it into increments of less than $250,000. You ask why less than 250? Well, you want to leave enough room with each institution for the interest accrual, so that's why that's actually done. So our technology will break that deposit into increments of less than $250,000. Our system will then identify institutions within our network to place those dollars with those institutions. That process, or that physical movement of the dollars being placed within each of those institutions provides the 100% FDIC insurance coverage. Now, in addition to that, even though these dollars are coming into the bank and they're broken up into smaller increments and placed within the network, our technology is also doing the same thing on the other side of the equation. There are banks that are also doing that within the network. So if you brought $10 million to Investors Community Bank, our technology breaks up that deposit, places it within our network banks, and of course, a matching amount comes back onto the bank's balance sheet. So the $10 million you brought to investors is still there to be supporting economic growth for the area, which is a very important component of the entire system. So even though the dollars are being placed within other institutions, a like amount is coming back onto the balance sheet. So those dollars that you brought to the bank are still really available for community development and economic development. And that's actually how that actually works. And that's what we call a reciprocal transaction. That is something that we developed, and that's why we're the #1 provider of FDIC insurance coverage in that segment. The other key component that's actually out there with the technology is Bank of New York Mellon provides the custody, settlement, and record keeping for everything that's actually running through there. And that's why we're able to, on a monthly basis, be able to consolidate that statement, a single statement that shows the activity for the account, as well as the individual institutions where the dollars have been placed. That information is generated with the system, and it's mailed to you, so you actually have a very nice, concise record keeping that's going forward with that. So that's the basis for our technology. And it works identical for the CD account registry service, but instead of it being with money market accounts or with demand accounts, it's actually being in specific CDs, but the concept is identical from that standpoint. Now, one of the things that I think that's very important to keep in mind with this, you're talking about, well, what safety or what kind of safeguards do we have about the banks that are part of the network, so we can make sure that our funding is secure and safe. And that's another component that's very important from our standpoint as well. And again, because of the regulatory background of our founders, one of the things that we actually do, the banks from a regulatory perspective, all banks are always regulated by either on a state basis or on a federal basis. And of course, there is a camel rating that's assigned to the bank. What we do in addition to the relationship on a quarterly basis, we actually look at the bank's call report data that shows, it's basically their financial statements on a quarterly basis that are generated. We have a company out of Brookfield actually called IDC Financial Publications, and they basically provide or conduct a camel rating on our behalf. They take a look at all of our member banks, and they basically do a camel rating analysis. And in essence, what they do is they take a look at a number of very key components of the banks to make sure that they're healthy and things are working out well. We'll take a look at the capital risk, the adequacy of capital and reserves. We'll look at margins. We'll look at earnings and liquidity. And part of that analysis would entail about 24 or 25 various ratios that they analyze. They provide us with a report card on that institution, and in turn, based on the numeric score that comes out of that analysis, we assign a letter grade. And you have to be an A, B, or C to participate within the program. Even though we've got FDIC insurance coverage covering the balances, if we have a bank that actually falls out of that category or is lower than a C rating, we will not allow them to participate with the program. They would have to go to what we call a one-way sell scenario, where anything that comes into that institution has to go off into the network until they get healthy. That's our safeguard, to make sure that we've got a very strong group within the network, and there is no risk that's actually out there from the depositor's perspective, because we actually analyze each individual institution that's a member, and they need to be within the right categories to be able to continue to participate. So that's a component that's actually out there that's very important, and all banks actually go through this process. Let's go to the next slide.
And Ken, I wanted to go back and just mention on the public fund side, I've worked with organizations, and Will has as well, on the public fund side. And in most of those cases, in fact, all of them, my experience has been realizing the importance of understanding risk appetite for the organization. When I say that, we think about 3 items. And it's important to rank these for your organization. We want to talk about the return, which is the interest earned. Are you getting a competitive rate? You know, talk about the safety of your dollars because you are in a fiduciary role. Do you need to secure the funds? And then the liquidity. When will you be using these? Can you term it? Do you need to keep some liquid? And honestly, Promontory with the CDARS service and the Insured Cash Sweep can offer all 3. And then you can decide what's the best direction for the organization that you're working with. Thanks.
Great. And when you look at it from the customer perspective, it's very straightforward as far as the process of getting into the Insured Cash Sweep or CDARS from that standpoint. We're really kind of looking at the Insured Cash Sweep with this discussion today. In essence, as a customer, you basically are going to sign a document called the ICS Deposit Placement Agreement, custodial agreement. And basically, that agreement basically lays out exactly what is going to happen and how things are going to function between the bank and the depositor. One of the pieces that's very important to keep in mind is that there's something that's called an exclusion page within that documentation. If by any chance you have an existing banking relationship and that is going to continue going forward, but you are bringing some large deposits to Investors Community Bank, you would typically list that institution where you currently already have balances as an exclusion. The assumption is that if they're part of the network, we want to make sure that we don't make any placements with that institution going over that $250,000 threshold, exposing anything from your standpoint. So once the exclusion page has basically been completed, that information is typed into our portal, and once it's into the system, we will never make a placement with that institution, which again safeguards those deposits that you actually have with that institution, and you never go above that $250,000 threshold. Very important component from that standpoint. But once the deposit placement agreement and custodial agreement has been executed, what next happens is you need to identify either an existing transaction account or an existing DDA. That'll be your transaction account, or a new transaction account is set up for the service. And in essence, what happens is that transaction account is the conduit by which those dollars will flow into the network or flow out of the network. And it's all based on that transaction account. And as we talked about before, in an integrated environment, you're able to actually set up a target balance for that transaction account. Again, this automates everything, so you don't have to necessarily watch things as closely, because if the balance goes above the target balance, it's going to sweep those dollars into the network. Conversely, if it falls below that level, it's going to pull dollars out of the network. So the big key, of course, is to make sure that you set up the transaction account, and it'll be a DDA, and you can use them when it's already there, or put together a new one if it's a brand new relationship to the bank. Once that has happened, those dollars flow into the network. There's one tool that's been developed that is very helpful from the depositor's perspective. Once the dollars have been placed within the network, there's a tool called the Depositor Control Panel. It is a website that we have developed. It's www.depositorcontrolpanel.com. You can go in, you'll have your own unique username and ID to access the system. Within that system, you're able to take a look at your transaction history, activity that's going on with the account. You can actually see the individual institutions where the dollars have been placed once it's gone into the network. If you're bringing in new dollars over and above that initial deposit, that new amount of deposits, you'll also see where those dollars are going to be placed within the network. So you've got that kind of control. That gives you a lot of good detail. But because of the fact that this is an integrated environment, the other component that's actually out there is once the dollars have gone into the network, you've also got the ability to use Investor Community Bank's online banking platform, go in and you can see the full picture of what's going on. You can see the dollars that are with Investors Community Bank, and you can also see the dollars that are into the network, giving you your full picture of what you have available from a liquidity perspective. So it's an easy access on a daily. Of course, you can go online and get that information. But if you want to have the additional detail to see exactly what institutions the dollars have been placed, you actually would be able to access that by going through the depositor control panel. So that gives you two ways to be able to take a look at balance information. And of course, at month end, you'll receive a single statement that will summarize your account activity and the balances across the various institutions that are within the network. So you get all of that consolidated information into a single statement, which makes things very simple to be able to work forward as far as looking at that information with those large major deposits. Will, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, just maybe something for clarification. You know, a lot of people have probably heard of CDARS longer just because it's been around longer. So probably just to clarify, CDARS rolls into the CDs as the investment option for defined periods of time that you laid out earlier in the presentation. Through ICS, it's going into a checking account, demand deposit account, whatever you want to call it, that earns you interest and is available every day, the next day. You know, it has that daily liquidity that the CDAR investment doesn't. So you can access that any day. Can you remind us on the CDAR side? It's been a while since I've had a couple clients on CDARS, just kind of based where the rate environment's been with rates coming down. But do you still have a specific date that you have to invest in CDARS, or can you do that daily?
Oh, sure. Great question. Because the CD account registry service is the long-term side, we actually have what we call a match. The match day occurs once a week for CDARS. The match day actually occurs on Wednesdays. So in order to actually go forward with CDARS, if you're taking a look or when to bring in funds into the institution, the dollars have to be to the bank by 12 o'clock Central Time on Wednesday to make Wednesday's match. So on Wednesday is when the dollars go into the system. And again, just a quick overview on that. The dollars go into the system on Wednesday. Thursday, that's the actual date that the CDs are actually set up for. And of course, the authentication actually gets out on Friday. So that's the entire process that runs through there. And that's actually how that runs through. And that's the big difference between the Insured Cash Sweep and the CD account registry service. Because you're talking about working with the CDs, the match day, when the dollars going to get broken up into the various increments of less than 250 and placed within the network, that always occurs on Wednesday. The CDs themselves are actually as of Thursday, and the notices are out by Friday of that week. So that's actually how that runs through. Now, one piece that's actually that's important to keep in mind, the depositors or prospects may be saying, well, gee, do I have to kind of keep my old relationship going until that Wednesday, for the next match? Well, there's also flexibility that's there because the bank actually has both products. Because they have CDARS on the long-term side as well as ICS on the short-term side, you can actually literally bring those dollars to the bank at any point in time. Let's say you wanted to place those funds into CDs, but let's say the dollars are available on Friday, but you still want to bring those dollars to the bank on Friday. Even though the next CDARS match is going to be that next Wednesday, the flexibility is actually there as well, because Investors Community Bank can take that large deposit, place it into the Insured Cash Sweep, which is fully liquid. That gives you your 100% FDIC insurance coverage on that large deposit. It can sit within the ICS account until Wednesday, pull out of ICS and go into the various CDs that the customer is looking for. But the importance is that you can actually have all of that liquidity. That you can use the liquid tool temporarily until you get to the next match day or the next match Wednesday to be able to place the funds within the CD account registry service. But again, the entire time that those dollars are there can be 100% protected with FDIC insurance coverage. But just a great example of how you can actually do that from a timing perspective. Any other questions that may be out there? Well, did that cover what you're looking for there?
Yep, that's what I had for on this page.
Okay, great. Let's go to the next slide. This is a great example of what that depositor control panel looks like. This is one of the screens that's actually from that site. So anytime, 24/7, you can actually go into the depositor control panel. You have your own unique identifier, your own unique password to be able to go in, and you can take a look at transaction history. You can take a look at activity that's going on with either demand account or money market account within the network. You can see the individual institutions where the dollars have been placed, as well as where those new dollars that may be going into the system, where they're going to be placed. If for whatever reason you see a bank that is going to be receiving a placement on that day, you've got a certain amount of time that if you don't like that bank, you can actually do an exclusion online if you wish, and that institution will get pulled out of the mix, and another institution will be brought up to be able to have that placement run through. So there's a lot of flexibility that's there, and that gives you some control from that standpoint, even going forward with the depositor control panel. So a great piece, a great tool that's there. But of course, you've got that, and on top of that, you still have the ability to go online with Investors Community Bank and still see balances. But again, if you want to see the detail on where those institutions or where the dollars are in place with it at the institution level, you can get that through the depositor control panel. And one other component that's there as well, there's also going to be the flexibility that if you are interested in having electronic statements from the Insured Cash Sweep side, you can actually, instead of having the statements mailed to you on a normal fashion, you can actually have them generated and electronically sent to the depositor control panel, where you can pull it from the panel and print it out at that point in time as well. So one more convenience that's actually out there if having an electronic version is something that's important to you from being a depositor. So that's also going to be something that's available as well. Okay, next slide. One of the things that's really important from our standpoint is, yes, we've got the technology that will take those large deposits, break them up, and place them within our network, and also bring a matching amount back onto investors' banks' balance sheet for economic development. But one of the other pieces that's very important is, even though we've got other institutions that are receiving these placements of funds from your large deposit, providing that 100% FDIC insurance coverage, your information, the client information is very, very important as far as confidentiality is concerned from our standpoint. The dollars that are being placed within network banks are only identified by a numeric identifier. No information at the customer level leaves Investor Community's bank walls. All of that information stays there. It's very important from the standpoint that the relationship is between yourselves and investors. No one else is involved from that standpoint. So that is an incredibly important piece that's actually there. So you're retaining that control. Any conversations that need to happen regarding any inquiries or any information that you're looking for as far as your dollars within the network, that is done through a contact with Investors Community Bank. You will never need to talk to any other institution that's involved within the network. Again, it's all relationship driven, so all communications are going to be between the customer and the bank, and that is it. No other institution will ever be out there, and I think that's one of the most important things that's there as well. You'll never be approached by any other institution as far as trying to grab or bring in a new relationship by trying to pick what's at Investors Community Bank. Our institutions that are participating within the network, they know that they're getting placements through the Insured Cash Sweep and the CD account registry service, but that's it. They will never know who the owner of those dollars are, and never will within the overall system. That's very, very important from that standpoint. Let's go to the next slide. What are some of the things that actually makes Promontory different than other institutions that are actually out there? I think one of the things that's really important is the fact that we offer a wide range, a full range of products that are actually there. We're the only ones that are actually out in the marketplace that provides FDIC insurance products that provides both short-term and long-term. We have other players in the marketplace, some that are on the liquid side only, some that are on the CD side only, but no one actually has both components. And again, one of the big components that's actually there that are one of the big pieces and one of the reasons why we have such a good relationship with investors, the fact that we've got that 3,000 member network is key. That provides us with the ability to actually have those large dollar amounts that the bank can work with. That $100 million per tax ID with the demand side and the savings side is there because of the sheer volume or sheer size of our network. We're not happy, or we're not sedentary from that standpoint. We're going to continue to grow from the standpoint of we've got basically 50% of the banks with us, and we'd certainly like to get that number to continue to grow, because that'll continue to grow our capacity and, of course, develop more and more products as well. With the backgrounds of all of our founders, as well as management that continues to grow, we're looking to continue to grow various services. So CDARS and ICS are not going to be the only things that are going to be out there from a retail perspective. There'll be more products coming along the line, and that's important, because that's going to be very good for the depositor. It's going to be very good for the bank as well, and that's how that really runs through. So no matter what you're really looking at as far as the types of environments or the economic environments that are out there, both products can actually provide liquidity that you'll be looking for, safety and soundness that you're looking for. It works whether it's a recessionary period or a very good growth period. Those products are really there and are available to, again, provide that safety and soundness that a depositor is going to be looking for. The other component, as we talked about before, we've got the biggest network of its kind. And again, we'll continue to really grow with that. And one of the things that we think that's very, very important is because of our background and because of the regulatory background of our founders, in addition to actually having the criteria that we use for monitoring our member banks, it was important from our founders' perspective that we are also audited. The FDIC actually audits IntraFi. We're the only entity that's actually out there in the country where we actually do get an audit. And that audit, those results of that audit is available through the American Bankers Association. So any depositor and bank can actually take a look at the results of those audits to make sure that they're comfortable and they know exactly what we're doing and how we are functioning. That's another component that's very important from our founders because of their regulatory background. That's also very key to the fact that we're endorsed by the American Bankers Association. That's something that's very important and will work very, very well. So you can rest assured from the standpoint that we never sit on our laurels, and at the same time, we also make sure that we're very transparent on how we've done, what we're doing, and who we've worked with. And that we think is very important for future growth, because again, nothing is opaque. We're totally open from that standpoint, and that's why we actually can feel very comfortable about going up against any other competition that's actually out there, because there are no other institutions that have gone through the rigorous components that we put in place to make sure that our customers are well taken care of, and the bank's customers are safe and satisfied from that standpoint. The safety and soundness issue is not of any question. Ann, you want to hop in?
Sure. Thanks, Ken. I wanted to reiterate, Ken mentioned this in an earlier slide, but using the Insured Cash Sweep and or the CDARS CD program provides your organization with the convenience of managing your full relationship up to that $100 million cap with a single financial institution, a single bank. I think that speaks realms to what your organization and its staff can do internally, which would solve for some unnecessary recon or additional recon.
And something I wanted to add too, Ken, is in addition to, I know most of what we're talking about today is, helping largely our municipal friends here with large deposits and making sure they pick up an acceptable rate and FDIC coverage. But it should be noted that with some of our municipal clients, we do offer some lending services as well to our lending or our municipal friends. A lot of times that ends up being projects that are maybe too small to roll into a general obligation bond. So sometimes some of our clients will come to us, have us basically do that CapEx refunding maybe at the end of the year or just after the end of the year, replenish some of their deposit balances, get a tax exempt financing structure in place. So that too is something else we do in addition to everything we're talking about today.
Fantastic. Let's hop to the next slide. One of the other pieces, and it's a great segue in, when you take a look at the appeal for public funds, and I understand that some of the customer base and prospects there are on the public fund side. Again, this is probably one of our biggest components that's actually out there when you take a look at the usage under the Insured Cash Sweep and the CD account registry service. It's really public funds, especially when you talk about Wisconsin. The Wisconsin statute requires that those large deposits need to have collateralization to them. One of the things that's important, and this is the recurring theme throughout the day when you take a look at ICS or CDARS the fact that you're able to bring multi-million-dollar deposits or multi-million-dollar FDIC insurance coverage for those large deposits through the process of actually using our technology and placing those funds within our network banks, that's a big key from a public funds perspective. You may have historically always required to actually have collateralization of those deposits, but in essence, life gets an awful lot simpler by being able to take the FDIC insurance coverage for those multi-million-dollar deposits. Again, full faith and credit of the U.S. government is provided. So again, you've eliminated any cost that you have as far as monitoring the value of those pledge collateral. You no longer have to do any of the tracking that's associated with that. That all goes away. Things are much more simplistic from that standpoint because you've got the FDIC insurance coverage. The other component that's really important to keep in mind from a public funds perspective, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is the fact that in a liquidation, if there was ever a liquidation within any member bank within the network, because the FDIC insurance is there, typically it's only a few days at the latest to liquidate and get funds back from the FDIC. More than likely, it's one business day to actually have that liquidation. So when you take a look at that, there are advantages of looking at accessing the Insured Cash Sweep and the CD account registry service because of the fact that you actually have that quick turnaround time as far as if there was a failure and another institution didn't come in and pick up the assets of that institution. There was a full-fledged liquidation. The liquidation process is actually faster than if you would have had pledge collateral because that takes a little bit more time. You're literally talking days at the slow side, but typically the next business day, the FDIC actually gets those funds back to the depositors. So you've got that flexibility that's there. Plus, on top of that, you've got the safety and soundness, and on top of that, you've got the ability to be able to take access of the FDIC insurance coverage without having any of the additional expense associated with actually getting pledged collateral. So it works out incredibly well from that standpoint.
Ken?
Yes.
Just on that pledge collateral, one thing that comes to mind is sometimes there's a little confusion on what the actual value is that's pledged. Sometimes when I'm talking to someone where we have collateral pledged for them, sometimes they're looking at what the initial security value was versus what it is now. So say it's, some sort of government security and it was X at the beginning and it's paid down over a certain amount of years, making sure people are looking at the right number. So sometimes people have overestimated what they thought we've had pledged for them as well. So that too is where some of that can kind of go to the sidelines by using some of this service.
Absolutely. So that's, and again, I think, another common occurring theme is we are here to basically make sure that you're establishing that strong single bank relationship. And because of the fact that the way our technology and everything works, we try to simplify things as much as possible, reducing costs, reducing things you have to track, making sure that all works well. You've got a very good overall banking relationship moving forward by accessing ICS and CDARS with Investors Bank. Okay, next slide.
Hey, Ken, maybe just two other items. You know, the other thing with utilizing the ICS service or CDARS, I mean, we're a Wisconsin headquartered bank. So having some of that money that maybe historically has gone to the LGIP fund, you know, that's getting reinvested by us into the communities that we serve throughout Wisconsin. You know, one of the earlier slides there, it showed that we do business in 59 counties throughout the state. You know, when you look at what the funds are that are the investment options inside of the LGIP, you know, it's kind of clear that that money, you know, I'm sure some of that gets invested inside Wisconsin, but it's not dollar for dollar, which, you know, an incredibly high percentage of what we're redeploying for lending gets done inside the state borders. So, you know, I think that matters as well. And then if there's a way that, you know, with kind of where the LGIP rate is right now, with us being pegged to it and being a bit above it, you know, as you're going through your budget process right now for our municipal friends, you know, there's a way to maybe outperform what you're budgeting for interest earnings for the upcoming year by, you know, utilizing a service that's paying higher than the LGIP, but also gets you the same FDIC coverage.
Outstanding. Well, great. The next slide we actually have there is just really taking a look at some of the government officers and what they're saying about ICS. You know, without going in line by line with each of the various officers that are speaking, the big key, of course, is that more and more folks on the public unit deposit side are taking advantage of the safety and soundness that's being provided by ICS and CDARS, and the simplicity that's actually there to make their lives as easy as possible while they do their due diligence and moving forward with handling those dollars in an efficient manner and in a manner that's got the safety and soundness that the institutions are looking for. We would strongly encourage, if there are other folks that are actually out there on the public unit side, to talk to others that have used Promontory or IntraFi. I'm going to have to break myself with that line as well. But we're more than happy to actually link up, you know, other government officers or government entities that have been using the service to tell, you know, to share their experience and how it's actually worked out very well. You know, the bank does that as well. I'm just talking to other institutions that have been working with the various types of product that's actually out there. So it actually works incredibly well. We think that, you know, there's going to be continued growth from that standpoint, because again, it's all about making things as simple as possible and providing that safety and soundness that everyone's looking for in a way, in a fashion that can actually provide those multi-million-dollar dollars of FDIC insurance coverage. And this is just really a slide that kind of gets into what the feelings are of some of the various government officers that are actually out there.
And we could certainly share some references from some of our municipal friends that we're doing business with, kind of all over the spectrum in terms of the services we're providing as well, if that would be helpful.
Excellent. And the next slide, final slide, is really just looking, are there any questions or that may be out there? Again, we love the relationship that we actually have with Investors Community Bank, and anything we can do to work along with the bank to make sure that we can put together packaging and the products that will best serve what you're looking for, always available. If there's ever any questions on that, you can certainly touch base with Ann or Matt or Will. They can certainly, you know, take any information. If there's a question that, you know, that they don't necessarily have the answer, I'm always available to assist with that, and anyone within IntraFi will be available for that as well. So we really look forward to the relationship. We look forward to bringing you guys in as deposit customers and enjoying the positives that ICS and CDARS brings to the table.
Hey, Ken, just one clarification. I know CDARS has been around quite a bit longer. Can you just remind us how long CDARS has been in place compared to ICS or the ICS option?
Sure. CDARS goes back to 2002, and ICS is about 10 years that it's been around.
Okay. So that probably got birthed sometime coming out of the Great Recession, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Ken. We certainly appreciate the time and the information. Ann and Will, thank you for chiming in and sharing some of your insights as well. We've got just a couple of minutes left, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Melissa, do we have any questions from the audience that we need to address in our last few minutes today?
There are none right now, but if anyone has any questions, now is the time to either put them in the Q&A or raise your hand. I see nothing new coming in.
Okay. Well, again, certainly reach out to any one of us. We'd be more than happy to share some further insight, talk more specifically about your business, your municipality, or your entity that you might be inquiring about today. But again, Ken, thank you for the relationship. We appreciate it. Thank you for the insight. And with that, we will close, and I will wish you all a great evening. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Have a good evening, everyone.